Ni hao, dobry dzień, salam. Hey guys, this is Ben from A Few More Miles, and in this episode, number 51, we're going to dive deep into the details of our cycling trip through Central Asia and the Middle East along the infamous Silk Road. A word of warning before we begin, this is going to be a nerdy episode, so if you're looking for an exciting travel log, I recommend you check out one of our other videos. However, if you're a traveler planning a future cycling trip through Central Asia and the Middle East, definitely stay with us because you're going to get a lot of value out of this episode. Let's take a look at our trip. We started in northwest China, in Xinjiang province, in the town of Urumqi. We worked our way west towards Kazakhstan, but first we jumped up into the mountains of the Tian Shan range. Crossing into Kazakhstan, down towards Almaty, we had extremely high temperatures. Working our way towards Bishkek and into Kyrgyzstan, we went through some really beautiful scenery, and on our way into Tajikistan, where we climbed up over 4,000 meters, 14,000 feet into the Pamir mountain range, down the Bartang Valley, followed by the northern route to Dushanbe. We then went on to Uzbekistan and Samarkand, where Amber had a tough time dealing with a kidney infection and passing kidney stones. We continued on to Bukhara, and unfortunately our visas for Turkmenistan were rejected. So we hopped on a train back to the capital city of Tashkent, and then a plane down to the Middle East, where we landed in Dubai. We spent a few days meandering around Dubai and Abu Dhabi before continuing our ride across the Arabian Peninsula to do a loop of northern Oman, finally finishing our trip in Muscat. The travel was about 5,000 kilometers. We went through 7 countries, and we took 5 months to do it, starting in July and finishing in December of 2017. We did have a few broken bits along the way, amazingly only one flat tire, which happened in the Pamir Mountains when I ran over a very thick thorn. And in the first week of our journey, I had a blown front hub, but fortunately we found a mechanic in China who was willing to fix it up the next day, charging me only for parts and nothing for labor. And although not a bicycle part, a crucial item of our kit had a failure where we cracked the housing on our water filter. This was very important as we were pulling a lot of our drinking water from streams along the way. And fortunately, we were able to get some epoxy to fix the cracks a couple times throughout the journey. And of course, the bikes fell over more than a few times, and when they did, it often broke off our handlebar mirrors. But that's okay, because with a couple of zip ties and some duct tape, we were able to get them back on. Overall, our bikes fared very well. Now, on the other hand, our bodies, not so much. So on the picture on the right, you can see that Amber had 10 sunburned fingers. It was actually so bad that she even got sunburned under her nails, and they were turning black, and we were concerned they were going to fall off. Her very fair skin didn't do so well in the hot sun. Amber also had a really difficult time with a kidney infection and passing kidney stones along the journey. High up in the Pamir Mountains, I had one night of altitude sickness. I also had 2 nights of food poisoning. And interestingly, both times happened in cities, not out on the eateries on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. Once was in Kyrgyzstan, and the second was in Tajikistan. Now, Amber, on the other hand, it seemed like she was sick every day, or at least every other day. So that poor girl had a really rough time. Too bad she doesn't have the iron stomach like I do. Finishing our trip in Oman, you may remember that I had some severe back pain. I pretty much got by with muscle relaxers and painkillers. Without that, it would have been an extremely difficult time to get ready in the morning and prepare to ride each day. All right, let's talk about some money. The entire trip cost us $5,600 combined. So that's the total cost for the 2 of us to go on this 5-month bicycle journey. This total does not include a few key items, such as the bikes and gear that we purchased before the trip. We also picked up some traveler's health insurance, and the flights to and from the USA, as well as the flight from Tashkent to Dubai, where we used frequent flyer miles that I had saved up. Finally, our last week in Oman, we got a little lazy and we stopped recording all of our spending. We did go out to eat at quite a few restaurants, and we spent a lot of money on souvenirs for our friends and family back home. Now, our trip was not extravagant, but we were also not dirtbagging it either. In cities, we splurged on hotels, Airbnbs, and restaurants, but otherwise we remained pretty frugal. To give you a perspective for some other travelers, we met a guy riding from Scandinavia to Singapore on a total budget of $2,000. And we also met riders who spent the same $2,000 on a 2-week group tour in Tajikistan. I would say that our trip was comfortable. We remained frugal, but we didn't absolutely dirtbag it, and we certainly took advantage of a few luxuries here and there. Taking a look at the total spend for each country, this graph is a little bit deceptive. For example, in Kazakhstan and the United Arab Emirates, we had about the same days per country, yet the spending delta is huge. Also, in Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, we spent over $500 combined in fees for visas. With the exception of the UAE, our daily spend was fairly consistent across the countries. Although we had free accommodations in the UAE, the food there was extremely expensive, as was the tourism that we did. In Oman, we did lots of camping, and we had free accommodations in a few towns. But we didn't have data from the last week of the trip where we spent a lot of money on souvenirs and eating out. So the data for Oman is not quite accurate. All in all, we spent about $37 combined for each day on the trip. Taking a look at our daily spend, each data point on this graph represents one day of the trip. Let's take a look by country. In China, we spent most of our money on hotels. In Kazakhstan, again, we spent a lot of money on hotels because it was so hot and we didn't feel like camping. And we ate out a lot once we got to the city of Almaty. In Kyrgyzstan, we spent a lot of money on Tajik visas and our Uzbekistan letter of invitation. In Tajikistan, we didn't spend a lot of money on the road, but we did spend a few nights in Pamir homestays, as well as a week-long Airbnb stay and eating out in the city of Tashkent. And we spent quite a few dollars getting our visas for Uzbekistan. Once in Uzbekistan, we did a lot of hotels because Amber was sick and we were trying to be in a comfortable place for her to recover. Down in the United Arab Emirates, we had free accommodations, but the food and tourism was very expensive. Then over in Oman, we did lots of camping and we had free accommodations in several cities, which helped us keep our costs down. With the exception of the UAE, our daily spend was fairly consistent across the countries, especially if we include the missing week of data from Oman when we bought a lot of souvenirs. Now let's take a dive into each category. Starting with accommodations, we had almost a 50-50 mix of camping and hotels, but still, this was our biggest budget item. Next up, food. We prepared a lot of our own food, and we ate at cheap roadside eateries when they were available. Of course, we splurged for nice restaurants in the cities. Overall, we ate a lot. The other category clumped a lot of the, other expenses together. For example, visas, souvenirs, medicine, bike repairs, and other miscellaneous items. We spent a little money on transportation, such as a few truck rides or mountain passes. We had train rides in Uzbekistan, and the taxis in the cities of the United Arab Emirates and Oman were much more expensive than elsewhere on the trip. The tourism on this trip was mostly spent just enjoying the natural beauty of our surroundings. There were a few tourist attractions in the cities, but in Central Asia, they didn't cost that much. And 2/3 of the amount we spent on tourism was to go up the world's tallest building, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. On this slide, we're taking a look at the average daily spend per category. Now, it's important to mention that averages are never experienced each day. Some days very expensive, other days we spend almost nothing, or literally nothing. We traveled as a couple, and accommodations are often charged per person, not per room. So if you're a solo traveler, you may be able to save a few bucks here. On average, we spent $14 per night on accommodations. But if we remove the nights where our accommodations were free, for example, camping and host stays, then hotels averaged almost $30 a night. And again, our average daily spending was $37 combined per day. All right, this is an exciting slide. Here we're looking at spending by country, and there is a lot of data here. So I'm going to point out a few things that stand out, but please ask questions in the comments below and we'll give you some answers. The other category in Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan were extremely high due to visa applications. In the United Arab Emirates, food was very expensive, and almost all of the money we spent on tourism was from here as well. While in Abu Dhabi, we visited a private hospital to get Amber's kidneys checked out after passing kidney stones in Uzbekistan. This set us back a few dollars as well. Lastly, taking a look at Oman, we spent 30 days in this country, but we only spent a little bit on accommodations, thanks to lots of free camping and some generous hosts. Taking a deep dive into the accommodations, you can see that about half of the nights on this trip were free and the other half were paid. Looking country by country, in China, it was hard to find places to camp without people. Also, it was the beginning of our trip and we were still getting our feet wet with how stealth camping worked, so we stuck mostly to hotels for convenience, comfort, and perceived safety. In Kazakhstan, it was simply too hot to camp, so we spent money on hotels and a week-long Airbnb in the city of Almaty. In Kyrgyzstan, we did another week-long Airbnb in Bishkek, and then we did mostly wild camping with our friends Manon and Pablo through the rest of the country. On to Tajikistan, we had lots of opportunities for free camping, and we spent most nights in our tent. We did spend a few nights in homestays along the Pamir mountain range, and we spent a week in an Airbnb in Tashkent. In Uzbekistan, we again did a lot of hotels due to Amber's kidney infection, so we could give her a nice, comfortable place to rest up. In the United Arab Emirates, we had a wonderful cyclist host family in Abu Dhabi and a couch surfing host in Dubai. These really helped us keep our costs down. On the last country of our trip, the Sultanate of Oman, we found the camping to be safe and plentiful. We spent almost every night in our tent. We had one warm showers host in the city of Nizwa, and we had another host in Muscat where we stayed for over a week. Now let's take a look at the days we spent in each country. Most countries gave us a 30-day visa. However, we wanted to get through the Pamir Mountains before winter, so early in the trip we had to keep pedaling and moving forward. Of course, we would have enjoyed spending more days in each country if time had allowed, and I hope someday we'll get the opportunity to go back and explore more. In December, we needed to return home. It was time to get back to work. Otherwise, we would have loved to continue the journey, and someday we hope to do more. Riding days versus rest days. We had 94 riding days and 56 rest days on this trip, and at the graph at the bottom of the screen, you can see a day-by-day look of days spent riding and days spent resting. Typically, we tried to rest about 1 day a week. In capital cities, we often stayed several days. The first day, we typically just laid on the couch to rest our legs, and then after that, we'd finally get up out of the apartment and explore the city. Amber's kidney infection did cause us to do a big stop in Uzbekistan, and in Tajikistan, you'll see the biggest stretch without any breaks. We had just one rest day at the end of the Pamirs before continuing on the northern route to Dushanbe. It was a great accomplishment, but we were extremely tired. Now let's take a look at the distance we rode each day. A few of these data points really stand out. In blue, you see China had 1 day over 100 kilometers. This is from when we did a strong push to the town of Ili, and we made a whole video episode about that 1 day. But of course, the one that really stands out is from Uzbekistan, where I rode a century, which is 100 miles over 160 kilometers in 1 day of riding. You will also see several low distance days in Tajikistan in red. Here we're going through the Pamir Mountains through some really challenging terrain. Even though we were riding all day, we didn't cover that much distance. The average distance each day was 32 kilometers if we include rest days, and if we don't include those rest days, we averaged about 50 kilometers per day. Now, I would say we're probably on the slower end of most bicycle travelers, so if you're relatively fit, you'll easily do these distances or more in your days of riding. Now, here's a fun graph. This is a look at our cumulative distance. So we did just shy of 5,000 kilometers, and to give you some perspective, that's like driving from Nordkap to Madrid, or Los Angeles to New York, or Perth to Brisbane, Australia. Aside from the few missed segments, the entire ride was captured on Strava. On to a new slide. This is taking a look at elevation gain per day. Now that big peak you see at 3,000 meters in China, that's not an error. We actually climbed 2,936 meters over 23 kilometers during a very long day in China's Tian Shan mountain range. You might be thinking, didn't you guys hop in a truck to go up one of those mountains? That's true, we did. However, I made sure to always turn off Strava when we hopped in the back of a truck. Taking a look at our cumulative elevation over the course of this journey, we did about 70,000 meters of climbing. Countries with a lot of climbing included China, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Oman. Flatter countries were Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and the UAE. To put it into perspective, we climbed the equivalent of riding from sea level to the summit of Mount Everest over 8 times. That's all I have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the details, the nitty-gritty of our trip. If you do have any questions, please post them in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like or a thumbs up. Although our Silk Road journey is over, there's still more adventures to come, and we hope to share them all with you. So please subscribe to our channel to watch future videos. Thanks a lot, everyone. See you next time.